Hari Om. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Shri Gurubhyo Namah. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Pranamam to all blessed souls. To the question, how many Upanishads are there? We can only say that it is believed that there are 1180 Upanishads. That would be one Upanishad each for each Veda Shakha. But then, not all of them are extant now. In an Upanishad called Mukti-Upanishad, there is a mention about 108 Upanishads. Out of this, 10 are considered to be the most important. These have been considered as the most important because Sri Shankara-Bhagavad-Padar has written commentary for these 10 Upanishads. Thus, the selection made by Srimad Shankaracharya Swamigal has actually been the reason for the categorization of these as major Upanishads, the most important of Upanishads. Now, recent research has revealed that Swamigal, Sri Shankara Bhagavad-Padar, has written more commentaries for more Upanishads. For example, Isavasyopanishad and so on. Maybe further research could bring out Bhagavan's, Sri Shankaracharya's commentaries on more Upanishads. Let us wait for that. Now, among the 10 Upanishads, the first cited is Isavasyopanishad. That is the order in which these Upanishads have been mentioned in the Mukti-Upanishad. Besides that, Isavasyopanishad has one more speciality. That is, the first mantra of Isavasyopanishad reveals the entire truth, the ultimate truth. All the other scriptures, all the other Upanishads, all these are expansions of this one idea. The description of this one idea. Thus, the first mantra of Isavasyopanishad contains in a nutshell what has to be known by a person who is desirous to gain knowledge like Atma-Vidya. So, Isavasyopanishad is also very important in that sense. Isavasyopanishad belongs to the Shukla Yajurveda. Generally, we speak about 4 Vedas: Rig Veda, Yajurveda, Samaveda and Atharva Veda. These have been so edited by none other than the great sage Krishna-Dvaipayana Vyasa Bhagavan. Sri Vedavyasa Maharshi had segregated the mantras in the body of mantras, the Veda Rashi, the body of mantras into 4 sections. according to the convenience that he had guessed his disciples would have in studying them, and also on the basis of certain other things. Vedavyasa Maharshi had taught Yajurveda to sage Vaishampayana. Now, how the Yajurveda now appears in two forms, Krishna Yajurveda and Shukla Yajurveda. Behind that, there is an interesting story. The story goes like this. Vaishampayana Maharshi accidentally, totally coincidentally, acquired two kinds of sin. One is Brahmahatya. That is because Maharshi had failed to attend an assembly of the rishis. And it had been also previously been told that people who do not attend that, the selected people who do not attend that, would be inviting the sin of Brahmahatya, sin called Brahmahatya. The other one was Balahatya, killing of a child. Maharshi had by accident stepped upon, stamped on a small child who was his relative, a nephew, and then the boy died. So he acquired the sin of Balahatya also. And Maharshi was naturally, he was upset, and he asked his disciples to do intense penance so that the sin could be removed. In expiation of the Guru's sin, the Shishyas were asked to go on a penance, to start penance, to do tapasya. Yajnavalkya was one of his disciples, Vaishampayana Maharshi's disciples. He was very intelligent, he was brilliant, he was a great scholar. Side by side with that, he was also slightly egoistic, or rather very much egoistic. Vaishampayana Maharshi, when he said that the disciples should start penance, Yajnavalkya Maharshi said, with a lot of self-confidence, bordering on hubris, he said, no need for the others to go and do penance. I'll do it myself, and then I'm capable of bringing about the expiation of this sin. Vaishampayana Maharshi did not like this. What he noticed was not the readiness to do this, but then the egoistic streak in his disciple. So he asked young Yajnavalkya to leave his ashram, and Yajnavalkya in a huff left the ashram. But then before he left, he also threw out, vomited all that he had learned in his Guru's ashram, and then he left, went off. What he had thrown out, that was eaten up by the rest of the disciples in the form of a kind of birds. They are called Tittiri birds. And they had, in other words, they had imbibed the entire knowledge which was lying there. And what those Shishyas learned, that came to be known as the Taittiriya Shakha. Taittiriya from the bird Tittiri, the name of the bird. And Yajnavalkya left the Guru's ashram, and then he went on and sat in penance, intense tapasya. And that was to propitiate Lord Surya. Lord Surya appeared before him. He was pleased with the tapasya done by the Maharshi, sage, Yajnavalkya, sun god appeared before Yajnavalkya in the form of a horse, Vaji, in the form of a horse, and then taught him Atmavidya. What the sun god taught, Lord Surya taught, Surya Bhagavan taught, that is now known as Shukla Yajurveda. Taittiriya Shakha is known as Krishna Yajurveda. What had been taught by Lord Surya is known as Shukla Yajurveda. It is also known as the Vajasaneyi Shakha because Lord Surya had come in the form of a horse. Scholars also remind us that there is this kind of a division for another reason. That is, Krishna Yajurveda or the Taittiriya Shakha is a mixture of prose and poetry. And it is more difficult to understand that than the Shukla Yajurveda. Shukla Yajurveda is full of mantras in poetry form, and it is easier to decipher that, understand that. So Krishna relates to black, difficult to understand. White relates to what is easily understandable. Anyway, this is an interesting story. Here, probably, it symbolically tells us that Yajnavalkya was very intelligent. He had imbibed all that his guru had given him. Probably it was remaining at an intellectual level. The real Atmalabha would not have been there if he had solely depended upon that. The guru must have understood that, and the guru must also have thought that now it is for him to de-learn some of the things that he had learned in my ashram, the guru's ashram, what he had heard from me. Now it is time for this brilliant scholar to set out on his own path, on his own quest, and understand what exactly is the truth at an experiential level, not at an intellectual level. So this de-learning would be what is indicated. Perhaps that is what is indicated by the story element that Yajnavalkya had thrown out, vomited all that he had learned, and it was picked up by others. Perhaps this would have been the real, maybe this is the real meaning of that story. And not all gurus do insist that the Shishya should remain with them all the time. Many of the gurus, when they are confident that the Shishyas are able to stand on their own, would be willing to send them away and make the quest in the wide world and to come to their own inferences, their own conclusions, and become steady in the Atmavidya, become firmly rooted in the Atmavidya. So this is the story behind the appearance of Yajurveda in two forms. Under the Shukla Yajurveda Samhita, we find 40 chapters, whether it is the Kanva recension or the Madhyandina Shakha. 40 chapters in the Samhita portion of the Shukla Yajurveda. Normally, the Samhita portion belongs to the Karma Kanda, mantras, and it would be followed by the Brahmanas, where it is mentioned how the mantras are to be used in action, in yagas, yajnas, in the ritualistic version. Here, the peculiarity of Shukla Yajurveda Samhita is that 39 chapters, the first 39 chapters belong to the Karma Kanda. The 40th chapter is actually, it belongs to the Jnana Kanda because it contains in essence, in concentrated essence, all that is to be known by a seeker of Atma Vidya, knowledge of the self. So the 40th chapter is called an Upanishad, and the name of that Upanishad is Isavasyopanishad. Isavasyopanishad gets its name from the first mantra, starting with Isavasyamidam Sarvam. From that, the Upanishad has taken its name. Isavasyopanishad is also known as Ishopanishad for short.